Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You are very welcome. I am End of the Line, and we're going to be looking at the Carian's straight swords for just a little bit. And by just a little bit, I mean I may have recorded a little bit too much stuff, and we're just gonna crack on with it then, shall we? So we're in here. We're gonna eat our little bit of crab. We're going up against claws. So the build should be popping up in just a second. We do our little wave to say hello, and the build is pretty simple. We have 54 strength, 23 dex, 23 int, and pretty much everything else is as standard. The endurance there is just enough so we can have high enough poise to be able to tank most things. I think I'm on 111, I believe, if memory serves correctly on this one, and that's just so we can like stomp. We can poise through stomp. We can poise through our flame strikes. We can just like not have to worry about it, but that's not really important. So over the last little while, I've been playing around, opposed to just been using my halberd S-stock, halberd dagger. I've been kind of been a little bit frustrated that, you know, the setup doesn't enable that amount. You have to play it very carefully, and we see here the amount of aggression. I'm just able to output, you know, the person's nearly gone, and I put him away there with the crouch R1. And I will say that ultimately, straight swords are really strong. They're probably, of the strong setups, some of the most... It's hard to say fair because they hit like an absolute truck. And we'll see this as we move on. I believe the amount of AR I'm able to get off of this build is like, what, like 608 or something like that without the buffs. We do the quick bows there. And these fights will tell you, I am an entry-level comp duelist. Basically, I can get through round one. Best of luck to me. And you see the jump L1 there, just chew through them. You can basically four-shot people in this build if they're not prepared for it. Now, obviously, you can have some crab. You can have your physic out in the wild when we're doing tournaments and stuff. So you do have some degree of counterplay. You know, the upline hard tier is very, very popular. And as a result, you can kind of mitigate a little bit of that damage. But if I'm allowed to spam, and you'll see an awful lot of this, if someone stays in, bless them, and we see we outspace that, we have huge whiff punish tools all the way across here against certain setups. And it can bully off meta really, really hard. It's, you know, some people have said to me that, you know, halberd is something that doesn't quite deal. You see those jump L1s, and, you know, he goes for that. I thought about spacing it and kind of like pulled back. That halberd bullies off meta. Straight swords does it better, and straight swords compared to, we'll say, the top setups, like let's take for example like PSGS, so power stance great spears, or dual spears, or any of that filth. It still struggles a little bit in those matchups, just simply for the fact that it's outranged and it can't trade enough damage to be able to do much. But even then, you have like aggression tools. You have that jump L1, and we'll be seeing this an awful lot as we crack on through the rest of this video, and we'll see it here. You know, greatsword, I can space it. If they do decide to just stand there, I can just spam into them. We'll see it here. We'll have our little bit of crab as we move along. Managing to get the backswing there off of the L1 afterwards. I still haven't found a reliable way to get that. We see that kind of jittery spacing as well. Just trying to bait out little attacks. I can just stand there. I'm in no rush. We have like what, like 3 minutes. I can just chill. We take a little bit of damage in that exchange to swap over to Millicent's there. I realize then as well that he's giving me space to ring swap, and, you know, Task Manager loads up trying to get some of those swaps. I'm not used to this menu. I made this build maybe time of recording, maybe a day ago, and then he's very low. There's nothing he can do. He might be able to catch me if I'm asleep, but now I can just put him away with the crouch R1, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. The little wiggles trying to just blur the motion a small bit. It's something I'm experimenting with. It's something a little bit newer. And yeah, it ends in the victory. And if you're interested in watching the entire... This is all one session, and I haven't adjusted the order or anything. So if you do want to watch the entire session unedited without me yapping, check the description. There'll be a link to the unlisted video there. And Professor Chungus, if my memory serves, I fought this guy a bunch. It was actually pretty challenging. Not due to the latency, he goes for that. And... 2 L1s. I think I 4-shot him there. I hit him maybe 5-shot. That's the problem with PSSS, and having both the... We'll talk about it in the Trina video when I do get around to fixing the recording, or just redoing the recording one of the reasons I want to do that first is it's overrated. Because it's outdamaged by about 70 AR on each sword. Its range is absolutely god-awful. The status against someone prepared doesn't really hold a candle. The reason I'm able to get away with so much here, I managed to tank that because I'm brain genius. I probably shouldn't have risked jumping against the Moonveil there. If he goes for that R2 at point blank, yeah, I might not take the full amount of damage and then go for the roll catch there and manage to put him away. You have to be careful against Moonveil that they don't catch you with the R2 at range, because otherwise they will melt you. If it's point blank, or maybe at a slight distance, if they catch you with the first part, they're going to do 0 damage to you. So that's an important thing to note there. And there we go. It just managed to come in. So speaking of difficult matchups, going up against this, I decide, like, yeah, I'm probably going to... The skips there are kind of a little bit terrifying, especially in PSGS, when they can nuke you from orbit. So he's going to come in, and I'm going to clip him. The latency here is pretty nasty. I know to roll that now. Once I've seen the hits, the way they were and how delayed they are, I'm like, yeah, I'm not really feeling it. Still, though, he's not really aggressing me properly. He's not using the wave dashing, which is to say the crouches, to kind of mask his movements. He is kind of just rolling at me in order to get this crouch R1, the crouch L1, sorry, to do the damage. And I throw out crouch R1, speak of the devil, and he shall appear, and out comes there, forcing me back now. Again, I'm chilling. He manages to get that a little bit. It is a trade, but I can, again, I just mash. And why wouldn't I? I have the ability to. He kind of stands there waiting for me to roll to try and go for a roll catch, I would imagine. And I can just stand there and just press. And that's going to be a trend all the way through this video. Someone thinks that I'm going to be afraid of them, but they forget that 2 L1s is basically half their health bar. I believe in some cases here it's going to be like 1,000 damage in like 2 L1s, which is insane that you're able to get away with this. Again, some people can if they really wanted. The mirror is an interesting one here because it's going to boil down to who can whiff punish better, who can pressure, who's going to call out the empty jumps. We managed to catch him there. I can't quite see what the with the amount of damage there, but again, look at that. He stays in expecting me to respect him because he's used to people, which is a bad habit I've gotten into from fighting in the arena, of expecting people to be afraid of you. And unfortunately, that requires a little bit more conditioning. And when I say conditioning, what I mean is I'm going to act in a very specific way and you're going to respond in a specific way, and then I change it up. That's what I mean by conditioning. And this dude here is going to be an example of one of the reasons why Elden Ring is the multiplayer game of the year. Dear God, you will understand very shortly what I mean here. The rot is... I don't think the rot's the problem. Yeah, I think there might be some shenanigans afoot here as he's... yeah. I don't know if he recognizes that something's horribly wrong. I'm waiting. I just hit him. There. Like... oh, the arena is a wonderful place. Nearly got me, though, is the funny thing. Like, again, when you expect someone to be staggered in a second L1, like when you're used to certain things happening, it can completely throw you off. And I think throwing off is the operative word there. And, you know, PSSS, you have your L1s, you have your jump L1s, you kind of have your crouch R1, but you're very limited in what you can actually do. Your mind games basically boil down to how often do I bait a whiff, and I come in here and I think I'm going to get a bit of damage. No, I don't even get the backswing. Yeah, the latency is a little bit rough here. I go for the crouch. I actually misspaced it. He could have punished that. I was brave to space there, is again based on the latency. He manages to clip me with the first part of that, but we're having none of it. We have him in the corner. 608 damage on L1. Like... that's not good. And in the arena where you don't have access to the physic, in duels out, in competitive duels, there is a thing you can do called tier skipping, where you get someone's, I can't remember the name of the physic off the top of my head, that basically, what does it do? It gives you extra health at low HP. Carian. Is a Carian Crimson World bubble tier or one of those? It basically gives you it's the second chance physic basically. And that's a really handy thing to have in your back pocket at any given time. Because damn, the time to kill, especially with something like straight swords, and these aren't the strongest ones. Managing to get the raptors there, that's actually pretty smart. I know the person's light rolling and looks fairly green, but the raptors is a really great way of stopping me from mashing with pure impunity. It makes me have to make a second guess, which gives them an opportunity, especially when they're on light roll, that they can just escape it. So it's not actually a bad pick against straight swords, because again you want to mash, but again it's it's not going to matter, as the orbital bombardment from the JL1 is going to come out there and just absolutely nuke them. Remember, you can have high poise and light roll, or you can have high absorption and light roll. These two things are not mutually exclusive, chat. So just keep that in mind, and we are gonna do a little wave. Hi, it's the straight sword man again. I do a little wiggle in return, and the straight sword man is kind of interesting. Again, he's rolling in. He's not being punished for it. I'm not quite sure. I didn't have ping checker on at the time, so I couldn't tell you. I didn't want it to mess up the recording, but I would strongly advise, like, connection info is an invaluable tool, because it means that it takes the guesswork out of the equation. You can just go, oh, this is how this interaction is going to work here. And there we go, we managed, he stays in. The bleed is quite high. I should have abolished here, as I have him afraid, and I almost pay for it, but the stray R1, the rare R1 comes out. You can tell I was playing DS3 a little bit before this. Combat ends in your victory, but, you know, Carians are a good option if you don't want to go for the full coded, because you can get higher damage output on codeds. There are some things that are a little bit funky with codeds compared to Carians. Some damage stats don't actually benefit it at all. Holy damage in general, I think, is still broken to this day, which time of recording is 1.08, I believe. And out comes these croucher ones. And again, the off meta killer that straight swords are, you have high damage, you have a good move set. I mean, what is it, like 15 frame attack, which is pretty nice. Really solid recovery on pretty much everything. Like, if you get whiff punished, that's on you, pretty much. This setup enables what I can only describe as some of the most brain dead play known to man, because again, you can do things and not get punished. You have the ability to pressure people almost indefinitely. I go for the running R1. That was actually a misinput on my part. I was aiming for the crouch R1 there, and we kind of pressure him here, and we managed to finally get him. And the latency was a little bit rough there as well, given that they may have attempted to do a strafe, but didn't matter. They were still however many milliseconds they were behind. And, you know, when you think about it as well, forcing that spacing game, not out of anything like any smart plays or, you know, kind of habit from playing it in a competitive setting, but forcing the other person to play that slower game because they're terrified of getting absolutely nuked. And the ram here, I go for the punish, and I don't think I outtrade him there. He is going to go for the whole thing. I've taken a little bit of damage in that exchange. It's 592 in that exchange, and we time our rolls. We're in sync, my friends. Lightning Ram, again, not something I'd recommend per se, but it can definitely threw me off there as well. I thought I'd be able to get the poise break. I forgot that it has like insane hyper armor, and he goes for it again, and this is just... He thinks it's going to work again. It's kind of funny. He manages to get that anti-air there with the whip. Now he's on the back foot. I'm very low here, so I have to play a little bit safer. I space out the crouch R1. Almost get clipped there, and you see what I mean about that really low recovery? He's not actually able to punish it on reaction if memory serves. That's both a terrible thing about the whip. I go for the L1, pressure him again, and I jump over it then to try and get that punish. Brave, I had fought him before. I kind of knew what the latency was like. But in the arena, sometimes you just have to play it safe and just roll. He wouldn't have roll caught me, for starters. I would have been out of range, or almost out of range, if he went for it again. And it's kind of my mistake as well when he was kind of a bit in that, when he was taking a very defensive posturing, probably could have gone out there and swapped to the feathers. That's a mistake on my part. I'm usually pretty cautious, and this another great sword player here. He's going to look for an opportunity. He goes for a jump, empty jump, sets up for the chilling mist. I've been there before. I've been on the receiving end of it. I kind of know what to expect. JL1 comes out, nukes him from orbit. 606 there in that exchange. And he's going to try and stay in, go for a strafe. Not going to work. Clips me there. I do go for the JL1 though over the attack. And that's something you'll see high level PSSS users do. So when they're at point blank and they realize that the latency is, like, generally speaking okay, they'll just jump. If they can read that you're going to go for a thrusting attack that's not going to make contact with their hitbox, or even if it's going to be a trade, they can just jump point blank and just slap you. I've been on the receiving end of it for over aggressing against them, because you're like, oh man, his recovery is so low, I have to hit him in neutral. Not going to work. You're going to have to be careful and weigh up, because those jump attacks, the Z-axis abusers as they are, and we space out that then again, looking at another spacing attempt, not quite able to connect there. He's actually pretty interesting, you know. Colossal weapons are really, really cool in this game because they have interesting combos off of them, but he goes for the parry and then gets clipped with the JL1. Barely clipped by the JL1, still poise breaks though, and kind of stands there gormless, hoping that parry would have landed. Parries are they do an awful lot of damage. They're not as punishable as they were in DS3. I still wouldn't recommend going for them. They're not really a good choice, I would argue. And here we have it here as well. I can say hello. We are Cat and Board. Cat and Board's a fun one. I rocked it in a tournament. I remember doing some practice matches with a friend of mine a long time ago. I think it was in the Ohai Toto's tournaments, the TWT arena, and it's a shame that he's not around anymore. I really wish we could, he'd still be around so we could do some of those tournaments again, but I did some practice against certain matchups going cat and board, and it wasn't a bad choice. It's an interesting one. I mean, it is still an unsheathed stick, and we do have an interesting video coming up hopefully soon of PS Katanas making a comeback. They're becoming quite popular again on in the competitive scene, which is really, really nice. But yeah, cat and board is interesting. You have backswing. It basically functions a little bit like a slightly worse sword and board from DS3. You know, it's a backswing machine. You have that frame trap. You R1, they roll. The second R1, if you angle it correctly, will clip them. It's a really, really fun setup to play around with, and it's unfortunate that it's not strong enough. It doesn't have that reliability like something like Shamshir would have. But now this is a matchup that I am not comfortable with. Number one, because I'm not used to using PSS. I managed to go for that jump. He should have dead angled it up to basically anti-air me. This is a rough one because he does have a hyper armor and get those trades, and he can vortex much better off of those trades than I can. I do have to play the whiff punish game here. I managed to come in here. He jumps in. I call out his empty jump, and then he is put into a one-man blender, because that's what power stance straight swords are. They are a one-man blender. And you see they're just going to swapping back the rings, making sure we're all good. And Gucci, I'm actually curious what the matchup is. I think in paper, power stance straight swords probably wins for just purely down to the raw damage output they're able to they have on Shunter, but they lack the ability to vortex quite as effectively. You can roll catch with them quite nicely, but having the ability to constantly roll catch someone to death on Shunter is, especially when they have that hyper armor option, some really solid mixes with their own jump attacks, it can be quite messy. But out he comes. There we are in the straight sword mirror. Go for that jump attack. He does clip me with that. I barely catch him with one of the straight swords. Not quite what I was looking for. I managed to get the jump, and then he tried probably cut menu. Not entirely sure what his game plan there was. Could have been just a reaction check. I have a strange feeling that's all that was. He gets caught with it, maybe wasn't expecting it, or failing that, caught in a menu thinking I was going to pull back because I was afraid of another spinning slash. And I'm just within range and I can just mash. Again, Carians, at least in the old rule set, were the top straight swords, seeing as codeds were banned. And yeah, they're incredibly strong. And out in the wild even, given that the Holy Liver isn't allowed, but then you have RKR nobles, and I think that kind of evens out that one. It becomes a little bit more messier out in the wild as to what people use. But Carians for a long time were always people's favourites. Now Hallstock theoretically, when it comes to the likes of mind games and stuff like that, when you take them into consideration, this is a 50-50 matchup, or which basically means it's a coin flip. They're very even in terms of, at least on Lolat, he goes for that. He manages to get the parry. I feel like a little bit of a dumbass being caught by that, to be honest with you. But he's not able to get a solid wake up. Maybe the weapon art there would have been a nice wake up. There's a little bit of lat there. That JL1 is going to connect. He stays in trying to, he does have a poise break guaranteed. I have to hit him twice. But in the time that he pressed, I pressed slightly before him, managing to hit him once and then immediately hitting again before a trade. Even against the poise break weapon, I still managed to come out there in that interaction. That is crazy to me, that I'm able to get away with bloody murder on these things, and it's fun. But I'm not sure what I'm really learning other than playing a spacing game and actually using the Z-axis, which I've been neglecting. Having those airs, having the jump attacks and stuff like that can be very useful. And again, you kind of have to initiate against certain setups, so that I have to be a little bit more careful. I'm not quite sure of the latency of this halberd user. He can just poise break me in one. He also has a really consistent anti-air in the form of the JR1, not the JR1, just the regular R1. Giant Hunt, probably not the play. 486 there on that exchange. I have more than one. We'll see Task Manager boot up once again to try and get those swaps in. He gave me space he shouldn't have, but then again, when you're as low as he is, not really great. And I don't like those halberds. I really, really don't. That standing R1 is very slow. I can jump in. By the time I've jumped in, I've already caught him. I think it's good. It's good for force of trade. You have tier 3 stun with the halberd, which is really nice. That gives you a little bit more counterplay if we do trade, but I can still mash out of a trade as well. As far as I'm aware, against that one, I'm not sure, or at least I can force a trade me get to fight him again. I'm gonna do a little bit of the prawn, or well, sorry, the crab. Excuse me, the crab. The prawn days are long gone. And yeah, it forced that jump out attack. He's a little bit more wary now. He knows that I can nuke him from orbit, which is probably not the ideal. He's playing an awful lot more safe now. He kind of knows what he's going up against. I'm going to roll that just in case. Leighton Halberd can be a bit of a nightmare. I managed to get the backswing for 502. And then I can't quite make out the number I got on that one there. It's like, he's at half health basically. I've just taken 1,000 damage out of him. I'm been a little bit too greedy on these jumps here, especially seeing as he has that. I know there's a guaranteed poise break. I don't need the bull goats. I should probably change that at the start. Do I get the backswing? I don't. He manages to force me back here. I think I can crouch R1 him here, but I have to be careful. I can't really aggress with the same degree of impunity. Halberd, again, having that poise break is really nice, and seeing as I'm a bit cautious about strafing it, and we go for the trade, then he's not dead. He is so bloody lucky I managed to be caught from Kilo there with the running R1. I'm just going to roll it, and then I managed to catch him then with the crouch R1. And those crouch R1s come out really quickly. They're really safe. They're better than the rolling or the crouch L1. The rolling L1 is not very good on Power Stance Straightsword. The standing and the jumpings are really what you're playing it for. The R2s on Carians, they're cool. You have a funny thing you can do where the R2 has block frames, which is just hilarious. But is it really worth it? If you mess it up, you're going to eat a ridiculous amount of damage because it's Elden Ring, and that's how the game works. So, I wouldn't do it, to be honest with you. We're going to mash into his Y Enjoyer here. Funnily enough, Space recently rocked this in a first attempt that I recorded recently, and hopefully will be on the channel by the end of the week. Go for that. Yeah, again, look at those rollings. There's so little range. I think they come out pretty fast. The recovery's alright, but they just have no range, and you kind of need that little bit of range. You can't whiff punish anything. You might catch someone unaware, catch them in a trade. I see this here, a little bit of jittery movement coming out there. I managed to unlock. Unlocking, going for the roll there gives you that extra little bit of movement. Again, managed to get the swaps off. He's playing a little bit more cagey, but I can just trade into the Antspur in this case. So much easier. I will always call them stocks in a late trade there with the rolling R1, I believe. Oof. That's unfortunate, bestie. That is unfortunate. And we're slowly getting to it here. I think this is the last fight of this little string of fights. I think, I usually don't keep the kill streak thing in mind. That's not really how I play. But again, I'm an entry level comp player, and I'm able to basically not die here. If I and without using Bloodhound Step, without using that, without using really an Ash of War at all. The Ash of War on this is again kind of a bit of a meme. Managed to catch him there. The running L1 not great either. Clip him there. I'm feeling pretty confident about this fight, right? This is a great opportunity for me, but again, we're looking at the high damage output. This person's build is not much more optimized. Managing to try and get that crouch or one out. I'm like thinking to myself now, this is not great. And just unlucky there, the jump attack comes out, doesn't quite connect. If it had connected, we might have forced a stalemate there in that situation, but that was the first defeat in that little string, and I'm not going to say that, when I'm not recording or when I'm not concentrating, I'm not losing a lot. I do, but that's that, ladies and gents. Listen, if you like it, subscribe, follow the channel. I usually stream at Twitch. Follow me there, and hopefully, ladies and gents, I'll see you all again. Bye-bye.